We've got this from the Dallas Morning News. 11 people accused of planned ambush on Alvarado ICE Detention Center, feds say. Officials say the incident was coordinated, a well-planned attack by nearly a dozen suspects. It's kind of remarkable that I think it was literally yesterday when we were discussing civil war and its potentials. Our guest said, but what would the factions be? There aren't any. Who would actually rise up? And the fascinating thing is, there is this view that most people have. They base their reality off of movies, and so or condensed history. They don't realize that when you read a history book on the Civil War, it was years. Imagine what that means for the average person in this country in the Civil War. They saw nothing. They were uninvolved in anything, and the only thing they noticed was that one day they couldn't buy wheat, but then it came back the next week, or the prices had gone up. It was slow, and it was over a long period of time. The Revolutionary period was 20 years. So we have this story. Simultaneously, there was another story, and it was, man ambushes CBP officers, shoots cop. Then there was another story, ICE agents ambushed, cop shot. I thought they were the same story.
Yeah.
And then it turns out they were two different stories over the weekend of leftists coordinating organized assaults against CBP and ICE. So the important thing to understand, and I guess the kickoff of the story, they've been arrested and charged with attempted murder and one with conspiracy. I believe one was with conspiracy. This is how factions form. They have existed for some time already. Andy No put out a tweet saying, I wish people had listened to us. Because we've been, he largely, more so than I, but of course we here at Timcast have been warning about Antifa are organized bodies with plans, with armed elements that have and will engage in this kind of dramatic, violent escalation. And now we are seeing the response to Trump enforcing the law. When Trump's first term came around and he did not crush the riots, and then Biden got in and he let them largely do what they wanted, there was no reason for armed leftist factions to do anything. This is the point I've made about mass migration. I was saying yesterday, if you have two nations, and Nation 1 has 1,000 people storm the barriers and the walls of Nation 2 and start taking things and occupying homes, they would call that an invasion. But if the nation invaded doesn't fight back and just lets the people come in and there's no fighting, would we call that a war? What would we call that? Migration? What we're seeing now is Trump's first term and Joe Biden's term did not engage in law enforcement actions to a great degree against armed and violent extremist leftist factions. So, of course, we didn't see them pick up arms and go shoot up ICE facilities. They didn't have to. They were being let to do whatever they wanted. They were firebombing federal facilities, and that was bad enough. And nothing was being done to stop them. Trump could have. He didn't. Now we are seeing, in response to Trump's efforts to actually deport, an armed, organized assault to kill police. And it was strategized. They attempted to lure police out of the building with a fake protest and fireworks. And when they walked out, they opened fire hidden in the woods. So what I will say about Trump's first term, the assumption many of us made, I think I made this, was that let baby have his bottle. If the violent people ransack these liberal cities, maybe they'll vote to actually get law and order. And I was wrong. And I think people thought they were wrong. In reality, the message that was sent to the American people is Trump will not protect you. So voting for him is pointless. Good luck. So these people said, I guess I have no other choice. Don't get me wrong. There were many other factors in the 2020 election. But I think now, for me, what's clear is this argument that people will decide to exercise their power when they're oppressed is completely untrue. The far left engages in violence against ICE, against the American citizens, and they are not oppressed in any way. The reality is those who have power, who choose not to wield it, don't actually have power and will be crushed. And right now what needs to happen is Trump needs to just say, we are going to arrest and shut these people down. And I think the reality is he will be rewarded for it in the midterms because people will actually say a vote for Trump is a vote to stop the violent extremists.
Look, I mean, this particular one, the 11 guys, they attacked the installation with firecrackers and stuff. The dude that was in the tree line shooting, if I understand correctly, he shot like 20 or 30 rounds at him, and he connected one time. But thankfully, they're incompetent. But they were it was the most advanced and most well thought out action against the police that we've seen yet, right? Like they had Faraday bags for their cell phones. They had actual gear like kit. They had body armor. They had, I'm not sure what, they had helmets. They had comms. It was, really unprofessional, but it was still the most advanced stuff that we've seen from leftists. And you're going to see more of this. Now, thankfully, this was unsuccessful. But if there's another small group, like 3 or 4 dudes that attack and they actually get away with it, I mean, even if they don't get away with it permanently, right? Like they say they actually, God forbid, they actually kill a couple people and then actually escape and get picked up later, that will inspire more. This is going to inspire more copycat stuff. This is all going to continue to snowball.
And while they may not be competent, I think a lot of times people underestimate, it's a bunch of kids in their basements, but when we were in Portland in front of the courthouse in July of 2020, just in the 2 weeks that we were there, we saw their tactics advance, up to using leaf blowers and metal saws on the fences. And by the end, they were using Molotov cocktails. Yep. And I didn't see anybody get arrested for the Molotov cocktails that were thrown while we were there. So, while, there may be a degree of incompetence, these people are still organized and they're willing to go to that length.
So I believe public servants like ICE, Border Patrol, ERO are some of the bravest among us. Just to zoom out a little bit to get like a bird's eye view of what's going on. Outside of many different workplaces and outside of many different immigration courts, there are masked ICE agents, sometimes wearing badges showing, sometimes without badges showing, sometimes not fully masked, that has helped inflame the tensions of these deportations. They're waiting outside of these courts for judges to dismiss their cases and then making them available for expedited removal from the country. And then there's different representatives right now who are trying to advance different legislation to demask these ICE agents, putting them under further risk. So, for example, Rep. Nadia Velasquez from Bushwick, New York, and also Representative Dan Goldman, Representative Espaillat, are all trying to advance legislation to put these guys in further harm's way because activists are showing up to where these ICE agents are trying to do detentions. They're photographing them and then they're doxing them online. There's something like 500% more violence against these agents. Some people are also blaming different Democrat representatives and whatnot. So Governor Tim Walz said of ICE that they're Trump's modern day Gestapo. Also, there was another quote from Rep. Pramila Jayapal from Washington, accused ICE of acting like a quote unquote terrorist force. So there's a lot of rhetoric heating up here. And there's also this other thing I think that's like proliferating on the left, like this Luigi Mangione fever. Luigi Mangione was revered for his actions of murdering a healthcare CEO on some on the left, and there's endless justifications for it. I'm sure they're seeking some of that glory too. Yep. And looking for that praise in their terrorist acts here. I think a lot of this is proliferating on social media. I've been following some of the immigration beat, and these activists are heavily involved and have very violent rhetoric towards ICE on social media. And I suspect we're going to see a lot more of this before we see less of it.
Did they mask up? Where did you ride with ICE?
So I didn't ride with ICE, but in New York City, I've been covering outside of the immigration courts where they are heavily messed up, no badges some of the time, and there are many activists there trying to photograph the ICE agents. I've spoken to ICE agents there who told me they are concerned about their safety. Many of them have gotten doxxed. Some of it are very proud of their work and say, hey, I live in a right-wing area. If I get doxxed, my neighbors are going to come reward me for my work.
When I rode along with them in Maryland, that's what they... Basically, what I gathered from them was, the burden for us to mask our identity isn't as high as it is on the West Coast because people aren't as activated in Washington. This was in Maryland. But in this area, it's not as bad in terms of doxing as it is on the West Coast.
I'm just so pissed about the lack of consistency. That's what's really annoying because we understand why people are wearing masks and protesters actually do the same thing. Because protesters try to wear masks to conceal their identities because they don't want to be doxed for a valid or invalid reason. So that's happening, and I think left-wing people know that. And one of the things they're complaining about is the ICE agents kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, your point about the masks and stuff is really, really good, especially considering the fact that there are Democrat politicians now trying to pass legislation that says you can't wear masks. This past weekend, the 2 attacks on the ICE facilities. Well, one was an attack on the ICE facility. The other one was an attack on BORTAC, which is a terrible idea. But the fact that that these things are going on, and there are still Democrats that are going to be like, the ICE shouldn't be wearing masks, and blah 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 blah.
There's some irony there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that they're trying to prevent law enforcement from protecting themselves from clearly mentally ill people or violently mentally ill.
How much do you guys blame the rhetoric from Democrats? Because
All of it.
You do? You think that these people are motivated by Tim Walz?
No, I think that they're provided cover by Democrats, and lesser individuals are motivated by what is grown from the seeds of people like Tim Walz. Now, I don't think Tim Walz has said anything that we would say, variable plus Tim Walz equals a guy who goes and shoots up an ICE facility. But what we can say is Kamala Harris solicits funding to bail out rioters is a seed planted, or it is watering of an ideological extremist plant.
Exactly.
The next thing you'll get is a group of young people being told this is normal and okay. And then when they decide to add 1 degree to the crisis, it escalates to this. So what we have right now is we've allowed the normalization of explosives being launched at police. Now we say fireworks, but these are mortars and they can kill you, but they are very unlikely to. So they are a lethal attack against police, and the police do nothing about it. There's going to be a 17-year-old. They're going to be radicalized. They're going to enter the fray where they know they will not be arrested, charged, or shot at or harmed in any way if they lob explosives at police. So what happens? They will then, as the seeds of that rhetoric, escalate by a single degree. As you keep doing that, you eventually get to this. So it's not that instantly overnight there's a existing faction. It's all of these things are going to be snowballs rolling down a hill.
Yeah, that's a great point. The conditions have been essentially, fostered by Democrats for the better part of the past 2 decades. Whether it be Kamala Harris allowing for or promoting bailing out people that are arrested for rioting. Yeah,
literally promoting the
exactly
fund.
Or Maxine Waters, who is a terrible, terrible person, talking about getting in the face of politicians and going after them, or the fact that there were so many people protesting outside of the Supreme Court justices' homes. The fact that their addresses got out in the first place is a terrible thing. But like the fact that Democrats weren't absolutely excoriating the protesters outside of their homes. All of these things is a culmination of a decade. Go ahead.
The argument that Yoram was making the other day is that Kent State effectively put a stop to the violent extremism. People died. Yep. And that meant that for these violent extremists, they need cover. If there's 10 extremists, they need that critical mass protesting in the street. Mm-hmm. This is what I was saying about the reality of letting the baby have his bottle not working, nor am I am certainly not advocating for what Kent State was. But the argument that Yoram was making is that when college students who normally protest mindlessly and have no idea what's going on provide cover to these extremists, but then the National Guard shoots several of them, those college students stay the heck away and just avoid it, taking away the cover for the extremists to engage in violence.
I mean, we saw that a million times in 2020. I remember a specific example in October of 2020 in Philly when we were covering a protest, a BLM march, and everybody's marching, and then all of a sudden we hear that there's mass looting going on 10 minutes away because all the police are occupied by covering the protest and making sure that the protest is safe. So then you have a power vacuum. And so any place that you create a power vacuum, that's where the agitators and the scurrilous actors can basically step in. And it doesn't matter. It's human nature. Like people think, oh, well, like we can create the Chaz and it'll be like all party-like atmosphere. Yeah,
but let me. But I will just clarify for that argument that was made because I just fact-checked. The Kent State shooting was arguably 5 years, was well before many of these bombings that were taking place. The most notable ones from the Weather Underground.
Weather Underground, the Capitol was before that?
The U.S. Capitol was 71. Kent State was 70.
70,
yeah. The D.C. bombing was 75. You had 1970, 1971, 72, 75. So they were engaged in this well after Kent State. I don't believe that Kent State actually sent a chill down anyone's spine as the argument was made the other day.
When was the bombing? It was April, I think.
Which one?
The Capitol.
March 1st?
March 1st. So then
May
Day, both my parents were in D.C. actually. May Day 1971 was the biggest mass arrest in American history. It was 8,000 protesters were arrested all at once.
Wow.
And that was, basically bringing down the hammer. They literally were landing Chinooks on underneath the Washington Monument. There's crazy photos, and there were National Guardsmen all from Georgetown all the way to 7th Street with bayonets fixed to their guns.
Wow.
On May Day, doesn't surprise me.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.